It is Thursday. It's the month of March. The day be it 24 and the year 2016, the year of our Earl Thomas. And you're listening to Real in the Field Gulls, the weekly Seattle Seahawks podcast with myself, Kenneth Arthur, and not myself, Danny Kelly of fieldgulls.com, talking Hawks. And I believe there's 26 weeks left to go until week 1 of the NFL season. Seattle Seahawks, who they face in week 1, we do not know yet. Who they use their first-round pick on, we do not know yet. Who they start at left tackle, we do not know yet. And what we learned this week in the world of the Seattle Seahawks, not much. So this is going to be a quicker episode of Real in the Field Gulls. You can rely on us every single week. We've been coming at you. I believe this is the 59th official episode.
Yep.
We've had bonus episodes. We've had instant reaction shows every single week. It's been 59 in a row, never missed. So if you're a fan of the show, know that when you subscribe, you're getting this. Maybe not always at the same time, maybe not always on the same day, but every week you're going to get it. And luckily,
we'd like to stress that especially hard today because it's only going to be about 15 minutes long.
15. Usually we say 15. That means we'll go 25. We'll get a little bit of a rant or something like that. But you're getting the two best voices in the Seattle Seahawks sphere. Kenneth Arthur 1, Danny Kelly 2. So you're welcome and congratulations for listening to us. And tell your friends and donate to Patreon if you feel the need to. That reminds me. I feel like if you reach out, and we're not beggars. And we're certainly not choosers. So, I don't want to make it seem like that. Every dollar that's been sent to us so far has gone into the podcast. Right now, really, since we bought these new microphones, the dollars have just been accumulating for like maybe a bigger purchase to really take things up to the next notch. And we want to thank everyone. I want to thank Elliot Collier, who reached out specifically, donated $40 to the show.
Yep.
So we're thankful to our friend from above the border over in Canada. I believe that's a Canadian accent.
I think that's like Alberta. Yeah.
Welcome to Alberta. So this week, just hitting on some topics, I guess. Danny, whatever. There's not a lot to say. I'm not even sure if we did the last show after or before Russell Okung signed with the Denver Broncos.
I think we did it right before because I remember saying, don't count the Seahawks out. And then he signed immediately after that with the Broncos.
So we can't really hash. Even still, we can't really hash on. People have heard about it. It's not a good deal for him. It seems like
no guaranteed money.
And it seems like if the Seahawks didn't want to really beat it, then that says what they needed to say about their thoughts on Okung. And we'll see. Thing. As far as just sort of things that are going on this week, I mean, I know that today they talked about the Rams playing in China and the Seahawks being perhaps the most likely foe for them to face in China. If so, it would be, I believe, an away game for Seattle, so they wouldn't be losing a home game. Any thoughts on the Seahawks playing in China?
I mean, I prefer not to. You consider the ramifications of traveling east just for the team in terms of like going to play on the East Coast. Like it's just harder. And then if they're going all the way to China, I think it's just longer travel, more airtime. Throws off the rhythm in terms of your routine. So I just prefer not to. But
I think if sending the Seahawks to China for a week, if that helps offset the trade deficit that the United States has with China, something like $53 trillion, if that helps, then wouldn't you want to do that for America?
Yeah, that's a good point, Kenny. I didn't think of that. So, but
really?
I'm afraid to either confirm or deny what you just said because I really don't know what you're talking about.
Well, I mean, do some research on China. It's a country.
I know that
to the east or the west.
I mean, I know like where China is.
Far east.
Right. But
Furthermore,
you'd be flying west to get there. So how does that make sense, Kenny?
Seattle is the closest. Well, they're far east. That means that they're the farthest east, except for Japan, I suppose.
Okay.
How about this? What can you confirm or deny if you're Pete Carroll about the starting 5 offensive linemen?
Not a whole lot. They right now it's looking like Gary Gilliam's going to make the move over to left tackle, which is interesting. So, I think he's the favorite, and it's probably going to be him in terms of what they have at left tackle now. But then they have Bradley Sowell, how do you say his name? Sowell?
I don't know. I would have said Sowell.
Yeah, I can't remember it. Someone said it was like the same as Powell, so I think it's Sowell. Anyway, Bradley Sowell.
Sal Antonio.
Yeah, that's another. That's way that you could remember it. Yeah, so I guess that's gonna be the left tackle, and then at right tackle you have Jamarcus Webb probably. It's just I don't think they're done quite yet. I mean, they could work the draft. There's still some more free agent linemen out there that they could potentially look at. I don't think they're probably not going to find an upgrade at left tackle at this point, but yeah, that's kind of what they're doing. I think, like you said earlier, like it kind of just says a lot that they didn't offer Okung anything better than what he got, because his deal is really only like a 1-year max 8 deal, max 8 million. And so, I mean, that's not too bad. And that's something that I think they probably, I thought they probably would have tried to match that. But of course, that has the team option. So maybe Okung was just trying to get something that looked better. But from the sound of it, they didn't even have anything on the table for him at the end. So it was kind of interesting situation there. I don't really.
He gave up all of his leeway should he have a good season. It's not even a prove it deal. If he proves it, he's really giving up. He's just saying, I must sign with the Broncos for 4 years if he proves it.
It's a team deal. Yeah, it's a team option.
Extremely friendly to the Denver Broncos. And if anything happens, they just let him go, and he made $1 million this year or whatever. And it's just, you feel bad for the guy on some level, just that. But then, maybe we are the fools. I don't know. It's the 3% or whatever that he saved by not hiring an agent. We'll see. As far as people getting released and getting signed to the Seattle Seahawks, Andrew East gone, Drew Ferris coming in, or is there, I guess, as the only long snapper on the team. I know that long snapper has long been your favorite position. So what can you tell me about Drew Ferris?
He went to Florida as a collegian. And that's it. That's all I know.
Okay. Well,
he probably practices snapping it a lot. The other thing that you could potentially get out of this is that Bradley Sowell also seems to be a long snapper. So there's always a chance that the Seahawks could kind of see him as like a dual lineman long snapper. So I don't know. That's something to watch. But the whole long snapper thing is a little bit weird. I guess it's just a way to save a little bit of money.
The NFL ruled this week they changed some rules this week. The biggest ones being that a touchback on a free kick would be moved to the 25, not the 20, and that'll be on a 1-year trial basis. They eliminated chop blocks, which were just legal in some instances on passing downs. On running downs, and that's not gonna happen anymore. John Schneider saying that he's on board with eliminating chop blocks, and they kept the PAT permanent, as well as some other rule changes. If any other rule changes stand out to you, Danny, you can say so. But as far as chop blocks, will that change at all what the Seahawks do?
Not really. There's one like little instance where the Seahawks or teams that were using those could chop when they're basically when there's 2 guys on one defensive player. That was basically the thing that they've eliminated. And I mean, I'm sure the Seahawks use it, but I don't remember it very often. I think it's a pretty rare thing. And so my basic kind of like takeaway from the rule changes, it's not really going to change much. If the Seahawks did use it, it was pretty infrequent. And so they're not going to really have to change everything that they do, I think, kind of thing. So there is a more gray area now for them to kind of call chop blocks. What really should just be cut block. What should be cut blocks or could now be like interpreted as chop blocks, because it kind of just depends on, for instance, if the center, punches and hits like the nose tackle and then moves down the field, and then the nose tackle gets cut right immediately after that by the guard, like the referee could say, oh, that was a chop block because he was already engaged with the nose tackle. So it's kind of, it opens up some gray area, and I'm sure we're going to be annoyed about that next year. But for the most part, it's not going to be a big deal. I don't think it's. I mean, if anything, it's just one less thing that people can complain about when it comes to the Seahawks.
When Russell Wilson was a rookie in 2012, he was not the rookie of the year. In many years, I think he would have been, obviously, with the amount of value that he brought to the quarterback position. The rookie of the year that year was Robert Griffin III, even. Mm-hmm. He signs today a 2-year, $15 million deal with the Cleveland Browns, 6.75 guaranteed, 3.5 signing bonus. But he signs with the Browns, which means that the Browns are not trading for Colin Kaepernick. Colin Kaepernick's market now maybe is down to the Jets and the Denver Broncos. Those will be the two most obvious trade candidates for someone if they wanted Colin Kaepernick. But, there's still a Ryan Fitzpatrick out there. There's still now a Josh McCown out there. Now, since the Browns have signed Robert Griffin III, so they could send Josh McCown to the Jets or the Broncos or whatever. I think that at this point, the Broncos probably, now that they already signed Mark Sanchez, probably not going to go with Sanchez and McCown, but you never know. The Browns still in a position where they probably could and will or should draft a quarterback with the second overall pick. But that being said, Colin Kaepernick's market and what the 49ers will have to do with him, do you expect him to stay? Do you expect him to get released before April 1st?
Oh man, that's just so that's a tough one. I think right now, like if I had to guess, I would say he's going to be a 49er. It's going to be really, really interesting to see what happens. And of course, you can't trust anything that these guys say when it comes to their players. They say they want him. They say he's going to be a 49er, but I don't think they'll get what they want for him. So if I had to guess, it's going to be he'll be a 49er again. And it's not like they have a great second option in terms of Gabbert. I don't think he necessarily did anything that, really impressed anyone too much last year. So I would say they were probably going to try and get like, a second round pick or something like that for him. And that since that's not going to happen, and since, teams aren't going to trade for that contract potentially, they might just have him play this year.
We've talked about the Seahawks then being on the running back market. They've obviously brought back Kristen Michael. They have Thomas Rawls. They expect him to be healthy and ready to go, for camp and all that kind of stuff. They don't expect a problem there with Thomas Rawls, but still they expect it to be on the running back market, both in the draft and still, maybe secondary free agency. But Alfred Morris signs with the Cowboys, 2 years, $3.5 million, 1.8 fully guaranteed. We've talked about Morris as a possibility for a contract like that. Do you think the Seahawks should have been more invested, or do you think that it's not that big of a deal?
No, I don't think it's that big of a deal at this point. I was thinking if the Seahawks are going to get Morris, it would be like veteran minimum kind of deal. You know what I mean? Like a real small deal. I think it turned out he got a little bit more in terms of maybe like a mid-level running back contract to this point. So that doesn't bother me at all. I was kind of just looking at that, like if he doesn't have any market, then yeah, sure, bring him on because he has experience in the zone blocking scheme. But with the signing of Kristen Michael, I feel a little bit more comfortable with the Seahawks running back situation now. And then I imagine they'll probably draft a running back or two, coming up here. Not draft two, but they'll pick up a couple more guys in the next couple of months. And so, I'm not worried about that at all at this point. And it sounds like his rehab's, going really well. So I think he'll be healthy and everything. And
with talking about Rawls. Yeah. With the loss of Brandon Mebane in free agency, even after re-signing a Tiba Rubin, defensive tackle, obviously would still be a need, something they could, look to in the draft. But, we got Steve McClendon, a guy that I don't know a lot about. Signs with the Jets, 3 years, $10.5 million, $4 million guaranteed. So there must have been something there. I'm not familiar with him that much. And Brandon Thompson re-signs with the Bengals. He was a guy that visited the Seahawks earlier in free agency. As far as the defensive tackle market, was there anything there with maybe Brandon Thompson that you were interested in?
Not really. I mean, I think he was kind of like, kind of an interesting injury flyer, but I think he's coming off of an ACL. He was a backup guy for Cincy, and I think he was good there, but I wasn't necessarily like banking on that happening. I actually didn't really think twice about it after, he came visited, and then you didn't hear anything else about him. And I kind of just did that. I didn't think anything of it after that. I think they'll probably sign another guy, so they could sign. I'm trying to remember who else came to Seattle. There was one other guy that was pretty interesting. They signed Seaver Siliga, so he could, potentially be a guy that plays, gets significant snaps. Oh, Samuel Hill is another guy that's still out there.
At what point did they sign Atiba Rubin last year?
That's a good question. I don't think it was immediately. I think it was kind of in the whole secondary free agency phase, which is what we're in right now. There's still quite a few free agents out there that would be interesting role players. Obviously, most of the big name guys are gone, but
so he signed. Rubin signed on March 20th of last year. So
wow, okay, perfect.
Yeah, around this time, and I think any sort of guy that comes in, the Falcons, they're obviously connected to the Seahawks because of Dan Quinn. So some of their moves would be similar to the ones you may see today. Atlanta met with Courtney Upshaw and Ted Larson. The Seahawks need offensive linemen and someone to compete for an outside linebacker position. Any interest in either of those players?
I mean, yeah, if you're looking for a guy that can set an edge as a Sam linebacker, Courtney Upshaw is definitely a good option. Again, as it goes with everything, and I think John Schneider said like they need to be really responsible with who they sign because of their cap situation. But I think that in terms of a Sam linebacker, like a base downs guy that can stop the run, I think you're getting a really good player with Courtney Upshaw. He's not going to be a pass rusher. He's not kind of what we thought he might be when he was in college. And that's probably why he hasn't been re-signed yet. But I think he'd be a good player in the system in terms of a base down guy. It's kind of like the Mike Morgan. He's going to kind of come in and replace Bruce Irvin on rushing downs on first and second down. But he's not a complete player, so he's not going to get a lot of money. Just kind of depends on the market. So I think they're still feeling that out. A lot of these guys are still kind of going to and fro, and kind of trying to drum up some interest, drum up like a bidding war or whatever. But at this point, it doesn't look like for most of them it won't happen.
And one other guy that's out there as well is Carlos Dansby, and he's a veteran, obviously, and he hasn't really, played the same role in that outside. It doesn't really seem like he'd be the pass rusher outside linebacker type, and I don't know what his familiarity would be, but he was, played very well for the Browns at times, played very well for the Cardinals at times. Anything left there, do you think, in the tank for Carlos Dansby, or would he even fit with the Seahawks?
Well, that's a good question. I think it kind of just depends where they see him. I think people were thinking, he could potentially play Will, the weak side linebacker spot. But then are you going to really move KJ Wright, who had probably the best season of his career last year playing the Will? I don't know. I don't know if he's worth that. It just kind of depends on how they see it. But I think he could, in theory, he could play for the Seahawks. He's played in a 3-4 his whole career and inside, so it's kind of difficult to project him. But I think in theory, he's the kind of player that could make it work. But again, I mean, it's the same deal as Courtney Upshaw, same deal as all these guys. Like, it just depends on how much of a market he's getting. It sounds like he was going to go visit someone today. I can't remember who, but it doesn't sound like he has got a very big. The Bengals, yeah. So he doesn't have a very big market yet. And the Bengals are a 4-3 team. So they obviously see him kind of the same way I think the Seahawks see him, somewhere like either at the weak or the Sam spot.
Russell Wilson, spotted out in LA today working out with Paul Richardson, Tyler Lockett, and Kevin Smith, getting that rapport moving with some of the guys that he hasn't had that much time to work with yet. Obviously, he's very familiar with Jermaine Kearse and Doug Baldwin, having been with Baldwin for all 4 years of his career, and Kearse for 3 years. Has Kearse been with the Seahawks for 3 years now?
4.
Yeah. So 4. Really so they came together. So it's all 4 of them. They've been together, all 3 of them. But Richardson obviously has missed most of the last 2 years. Lockett just going into his second year, and Kevin Smith going into his second year, and doesn't get a lot of time with the ones. any sort of can you feel some sort of semblance of security that the Seahawks have 5 wide receivers right now that will be the 5 wide receivers in week 1? Obviously, with Paul Richardson, there's always going to be questions. Kevin Smith's still going to be fighting for a job. But do you see them making any other moves as far as wide receivers go, whether that be before, the day 3 of the draft or in free agency?
I don't think in free agency they'll add anyone like name worthy. You know what I mean? Like kind of like it might be like a guy at the very end that they just signed, like a Deshaun Fox like last year or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of have a guy like you'd never heard of. Not that was a good example, but just like someone like random that you've never heard of. They might add.
I was pretty disappointed in that example.
But I think they're pretty happy with what they have in terms of the receiving core. I think it wouldn't surprise me actually if they did draft another receiver relatively high. It just seems like the Seahawks do things that everyone
they have a 3rd round comp pick, right?
Yeah. So they do things that, yeah, I mean, and they've consistently drafted skill position guys high. So, it wouldn't surprise me if they did another one. And I don't think they're relying on Paul Richardson at this point. I think they're kind of like, if he gives them anything next year, like that's a huge bonus. I don't think that they expect that he'll be reliable.
Do you hear like a lot of love for Kevin Smith? Do you think that they think so highly of him that in the same way that they may speak highly of some of the guys that they've got as well in the deeper parts of the roster, like say Kelsey McRae or I just had a guy right, Cisse or something like that. They think they've got those guys that they're like, we wouldn't let go of these guys. Do you think they think that highly of Smith?
I have heard that they really like Smith. Now, I mean, you tend to hear things with the Seahawks because they're very optimistic. So it's like you tend to hear like, oh, they love this guy, whatever. But I've also heard like last year, I heard before the season that it was like a make it or break it with Chris Matthews. Basically, they needed to see something from him, and we saw him get cut like somewhere in the middle of the year. I can't remember exactly when, but I remember hearing that after, I think like in the middle or after training camp got going, like I heard, okay, well, he needs to step his game up or else he's going to be gone. And that ended up happening. So it is kind of interesting what I've heard about Kevin Smith. They really like him. They think he can potentially push Richardson, even if Richardson is healthy. So, I mean, that doesn't say a ton about Richardson, but I think it's probably more just because he's been hurt this whole time and they just really they can't expect a lot from him if he's just not on the field. So, it's going to be interesting there. I'm excited to see what Casey Williams can do. I'm excited to see what Antoine Goodley can do. I don't know anything really much about Deshaun Fox or Tyler Slavin. Jeff Fuller is kind of an X factor. He's a CFL guy. So, but I think the most exciting potential, bonus guy is obviously Paul Richardson. I mean, he was like a 2nd round pick. So you kind of forget about him. I mean, people don't forget about him, but it's like he hasn't done anything in 2 years. So it's gonna be, if he all of a sudden emerges as kind of what they thought he was going to be, that'd be huge.
Speaking of make it or break it, I was an extra in a TV show once. It was a show called Make It or Break It. And it's on ABC Family about like Olympic gymnasts or something like that. And I was in the crowd, and I went and did a couple days of work there. So, fun fact about me.
What?
When I first moved to LA, you got to take any sort of jobs that, pay money for not doing anything. Anybody can be an extra. So it's just like, $80 a day or something like that. You go stand around for 10 hours. I think those shoots went for like 12 or 16 hours. It's pretty nuts. But the more they go, the more you get paid. So that was good. I also was like a PA on like one episode of one of Gordon Ramsay's shows. Like,
oh, really?
What's the one where he like turns a kitchen around? Like
is that Kitchen Nightmare? No,
yeah, I think. Well, there's Hell's Kitchen, Kitchen Nightmare. I think it might be Kitchen Nightmare.
Whatever it is, it's something like that. I remember there was one episode where it was like the crazy people in Arizona.
Yeah,
one was like a gangster guy.
Amy's Bakery or Amy's Cafe.
Yes. God, that was the best.
Yeah, so that one was like, and I did meet Gordon Ramsay only by chance. We're not supposed to like talk to him, but I was like,
did he call you a donkey
again? No,
come back here, you donkey.
I love Gordon, and
I
he was
love
a very
Gordon.
sweet man, and it's all for the show. It's all for TV.
He was a sweet man.
He was a
Okay.
sweet man. I was just like walking by, and I was like, "Oh, hey, I'm a big fan." And he was like, "Oh, thanks, mate." And he like shook, and then he like kept going. But yeah,
I actually really love Gordon Ramsay. That's funny.
he's great. If you ever want to know, if you don't know, if you've ever like made eggs and made scrambled eggs and thought like, "Oh yeah, I know how to make scrambled eggs," watch Gordon Ramsay make scrambled eggs on YouTube. Go to YouTube, search Gordon Ramsay scrambled eggs or whatever.
Go to the Google.
Go to the Google this and watch him. It's really simple. It's like a 4-minute video. He shows you how to make scrambled eggs. It'll change how you make scrambled eggs. It'll change your life. It is super easy, and it's the best scrambled eggs I've ever had, and I made them. You just watch him do it. It's pretty phenomenal.
He uses eggs as like a real barometer on how much of a chef you are.
Yeah, I think a lot of chefs believe that. If you can't make eggs, then you don't belong in a kitchen.
Fuck right off.
Yeah.
As you would say.
I've seen I think I've seen Emerald say that. And maybe I've seen Bobby Flay say that. It's just like, you make me an egg, and if you can't do it, no matter how much what's on your resume, if you don't make eggs the way that they see eggs, get the fuck off.
So, right.
I thought this was interesting, and then we can call it a day. Did you see the movie Draft Day?
No.
It's a stupid movie. Even though Kevin Costner plays the GM of the Browns, the Seahawks feature prominently because I think they have the first overall pick in this hypothetical draft.
That's weird.
Yeah, so like the Seahawks are like they have the first pick in this movie, and the Browns, they're like trade down and they trade up and they blah 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 blah. It's so stupid. I mean, the Browns do a lot of stupid things, but things that don't exist would never happen. Anyway, in this movie, they talk about how there's a trick or whatever that when coaches or GMs meet with a certain player at the combine or whatever, that they would give them a notebook or whatever and say like, well, just read this and tell me what you think, or if you read this, and then they'd slip $100 bill in there, and then if the player said, oh, I found $100 or whatever, then they would know that they went through with what they said. So it's just like an interesting trick that may have been culled from like something that someone actually does. And speaking of which, today, see this story coming out. Well, it's been brought up on Reddit. And it says Jamarcus Russell's coaches didn't believe he was watching game film, and so they sent him home with blank DVDs. He returned claiming he watched the video and liked the game plan, obviously lying. And it's like, this is classic, like good versus bad players, and prospects. That if you're not willing to put in the work, you're not going to get anything out of it. Obviously, Russell Wilson, we have something like that. I don't think that, no one would ever have to test Russell Wilson and whether or not he was watching game film. He probably gives Pete Carroll game film and says, watch this. And, there's probably no problems there. Just wanted to say that, just get your thoughts on this Jamarcus Russell blank DVDs, and players that you don't think that this is probably part of the vetting process that Pete Carroll has for players, not just talented ones, but he wants to know, are you really actually going to do the work? Do you want to do this?
Right. I mean, I think it's like, that's the difference for a lot of players, that because there's a lot of talented players in the draft. But then, it's the guys like, that's why you always hear Pete Carroll and John Schneider talk about grit. It's like guys that will really strain and work hard to improve and to study and learn, and especially important at the quarterback position. So, that kind of along the same lines as the whole, RG3 story, that happened like today, is like he kind of got the reputation as not working too hard, not working on his fundamentals and things like that. His mechanics really fell off. And so it's, that's kind of one of those things you never really know what's going on. That's why, like, when you're just watching tape, you can't really know like how a guy works. That's why like these teams have to do such in-depth work on all that. But it's obviously a huge deal, can't skate by.
Good 2016 Halloween costume, Jamarcus Russell Wilson. It could be like a Two-Face type deal, cutting it yourself down the middle with the jerseys and everything like that. Raiders, Seahawks, Jamarcus Russell Wilson. You're like good on one side, bad on the other. Lots of different ways to go with that. I don't know. You take it from there, everybody. And we'll take it from here on Reel in the Field Goals, the quickie edition. I think we did go about 25, and yeah, but we're here every week. So follow on Twitter at Field Goals. Follow, subscribe to the show on iTunes. Reel in the Field Goals. Tell people, check it out. Go to fieldgoals.com. Check out the Patreon if you wish. Patreon.com/fieldgoals. It's a monthly donation thing, so you can donate just $1 or $2, and that'll just help us out each month, or don't. It's up to you. Do with your money what you will, and I would.
Great pitch, man.
I would say. That is the end of the show. So until the next time, make sure that you keep it real in the field. Goals.